By the hundreds of thousands, they came today from all across our land to proclaim with love that life is precious, to defend with passion the proposition that all human beings are sacred from the moment of conception to the instant of natural death. Good evening. I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents Week in Review. The March for Life is our top story tonight, as it has been throughout the week. And for the 40th year in a row, Catholics, Christians, people of goodwill from everywhere assembled today in our nation's capital, speaking with one voice. Abortion is wrong, and the slaughter of the innocents must end. We have complete team coverage tonight. Organizers of the march are reporting that more than 500,000 pilgrims joined together in Washington with a prominent contingent of young people bringing new energy and life to the cause. We begin the story at our national shrine to the Immaculate Conception with last night's National Prayer Vigil for Life.
Pilgrims from all over the U.S. came to Washington to participate in the 40th March for Life and other related events, which included the Youth Rally and Mass for Life and the National Prayer Vigil.
Where society has become more secular and far more socially liberal on a large range of issues, but the opposition to abortion is growing, including among younger Americans who tend to be more liberal on other issues.
Young people who say it's cool to be pro-life brought their energy to the nation's capital.
Abortion should be stopped.
Abortion, is really wrong, and that it should just be stopped as soon as possible.
Statistics are showing that the younger generation across the board here in America is more pro-life. Not wanting abortion, not seeing it as a good thing. And here we just see that so prominently, the young church gathering. It's so beautiful that the young church is gathering here for Mass, that Mass is the starting point of our day together, the starting point of our witness. So we know that really it's only going to be through Jesus Christ, who comes to us here at the Mass, that this battle is actually going to be won.
It's going to take a lot of people to believe in it and fight for it, for the right.
And then the young and old and everybody in between moved onto the streets of Washington. Joining them are Jim Mancari, who filed this report from a very cold and crowded Washington mall.
I'm standing in between the Supreme Court and Capitol building in Washington, D.C., where hundreds of thousands of pro-life supporters are walking in the 40th annual March for Life. Scores of young people from across the country are carrying anti-abortion signs as they descend upon the Supreme Court. An estimated 80% of the participants in the march are under age 30. The future of the pro-life movement lies in the hands of the youth of the nation. While the atmosphere seems full of energy and excitement, the march is actually intended to be a somber occasion commemorating the unborn lives lost to abortion. In the 40 years since the decision in Roe v. Wade, more than 55 million abortions have been performed nationwide. Speakers at the march include Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky.
Our nation is adrift in a wilderness where right and wrong have become subservient to a hedonism of the moment. I believe our country is in need of a revival. I believe our country is in need of a spiritual cleansing.
As the annual March for Life maintains its pro-life message, the voice of the unborn children will continue to resonate in the halls of Congress. Reporting for Currents, I'm Jim Mancari.
Well, to prepare for this historic day and before making their journey south, marchers from our diocese attended Mass. And at one church in Jamaica, Queens, the commitment to the cause and the love for life were almost powerful enough to touch.
Today, we're going to pray, especially as our way to Washington, D.C., the March for Life.
I feel like there's not enough teens, there's not enough people our age who stand up and for what they believe in. And I'm crazy pro-life, and I just feel like abortion is never the choice. And I really hope one day it's illegal.
Our generation, like a lot of generations, survive on values, and I think children are values. And you need values in order to survive the generation.
We just celebrated Mass on the Feast of the Conversion in St. Paul in preparation for our trip to Washington, D.C. for the March for Life. We as parish have been actively preaching the message that life is sacred. Within the last year, one of the largest abortion clinics in New York City opened up within our parish boundaries. So we as a parish have been very vocal in praying before the clinic, praying for the conversion of people that work there, praying for the closing of the clinic, and particularly there's a great feast of St. Paul, praying for conversion, those who think abortion is right.
Well, before I didn't really believe like in God and everything, but now that I see, like, he's pretty much like opened up my heart and he made me realize that he is there and he is my savior. I'm trying to go there so that the people can understand that abortion isn't the answer and that once something is in like the mother's womb, it's there.
I've met a lot of girls here in the church and in school that have had abortions, and I've seen the stress that they go through, the pain, the nightmares, everything. I've been there with them. So being the oldest, I feel like I'm a sister to them in a way. And I want to help them. I want to show them that that's not the only option. There's adoption. There's other things. Like, you can take care of the baby. The church will help you. ¿Cómo te sientes yendo a la marcha?
Estamos felices porque estamos participando contra el aborto.
We have hundreds and thousands of people there. Hundreds of thousands, okay? So we need to stay together, especially on the bus, when we stop, when we get to Washington.
Como católicos tenemos que dar testimonio de esa fe, estando presentes y defendiendo la vida, no solo hablando, no solo con palabras, sino también con hechos. Es un día para demostrar al mundo que realmente Dios existe y la vida es algo sagrado.
Our Brooklyn Queens Diocese led the way to Washington today. More buses from here, 16, than from any other diocese in New York State. And our parent company, DeSales Media, sponsored half of them. Our extended coverage of the march continues. We will tell you about the Pope's prayers for the marchers and an expert's assessment of how Roe changed America after the break. Welcome back to our coverage of the March for Life. Pope Benedict is praying tonight for the marchers. In a personal message from the Holy Father, he writes that he joins with them, although from afar, at the Vatican. And he prays with them that politicians will protect the unborn and promote a culture of life. Benedict's predecessor, Blessed Pope John Paul II, famously described an opposite culture, the culture of death, the culture that now afflicts our world. In his 1995 encyclical, The Gospel of Life, John Paul used the term culture of death 12 times and in clear, direct language declared that abortion is murder, a fundamental teaching of the Catholic Church. Meantime, Governor Andrew Cuomo's push to increase the number of child killings in New York is coming under fire tonight, and the criticism is from members of his party. Democrats for Life are saying Cuomo's strong support for a radical new abortion law in this state does nothing to help women, but the law would turn New York into the late-term abortion capital of the world. The pro-life leaders are calling on Cuomo, himself a Catholic, to instead develop a support system for women where they are provided real choices so they may bring their children to term. New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan has been the leading critic of the Cuomo abortion law. He's in Washington now with the marchers, and he's calling on teens and young adults to become leaders themselves in restoring respect for all human life. The Cardinal adds that protecting the innocent baby in her mother's womb is the civil rights issue of our time. Now, at the same time, the bishops of Colorado tonight are rushing to review a claim by a Catholic hospital that a fetus is not a person. St. Thomas More Hospital is being sued following the death of a mother and her 2 unborn children. In court papers, the hospital wrote that Colorado's wrongful death law does not apply to fetuses since they're not people. As soon as Colorado's 3 bishops learned of the litigation, they promised a swift review of the lawsuit and the hospital's policies and practices. And in Denver, Catholic health and legal professionals are meeting to ensure that pro-life activities always recognize the importance of end-of-life care. The aim of the group is to develop medical, supportive, and spiritual end-of-life services that are consistent with Catholic Church teachings. One of the organizers says that unfortunately today there's not a whole lot of natural death. Well, life, respect for it, and how it is valued in our culture has changed dramatically in the 40 years since the U.S. Supreme Court legalized the slaughter of the innocents in their infamous Roe v. Wade decision. Cardinal J. Francis Stafford has been a keen student of the revolution Roe has wrought in America. And tonight, in the second part of a special report, Cardinal Stafford tells us of his tears for our country as he describes how America has changed.
Already there was considerable unrest among women about the fidelity of men in marriage, and also the control of men. Women felt that the power of men was being used unfairly in the fact that they were so dependent upon them financially, and that they could not trust them in their willingness to give of themselves without a dominating demand. The generation before Roe versus Wade were able to say, I had that experience many times. So I don't want to place everything upon abortion, because I think there's much that has contributed to the abortion environment that, as a matter of fact, is part of the very nature of what it means to be a part of this consumer society. What I'm saying is that the issue that we're dealing with is not simply individual human beings. There is a culture that is a technological mindset, that is that we not only use things, but we use persons to increase one's own power and one's own ability to survive. The issue of abortion really requires an honest and mature addressing by the American people. I believe increasingly we are perceiving children as objects of fear, our fear of them. They are objects of fear because they are preventing us from being what we want to be. To perceive a child as an enemy, as a menace, is a fundamental aberration of the human person. How do we respond to all of this? I think one of the fundamental responses is the blessedness that Jesus gave to those who mourn. Blessed are those who weep, for they shall be comforted. I weep for the United States. I don't know what to do because I see it as so mortally damaging to us as a people in the beauty of what our potential is. So I think we need to mourn and to weep. But they're tears that are tears that lead us to a more profound personal conversion. We need to love our brothers and sisters who are co-nationalist with us. We need to understand the meaning of forgiveness within this context. We need above all to pray for them and to pray for ourselves that we do not become arrogant in our response, because we too are sinners. And we need to pray that others may be more open to this wonderful call that is theirs.
Welcome back to Currents Week in Review. The war against terrorists as Al-Qaeda surges around the globe is an important story of the week. As we've been reporting, the latest battlefront is in Mali. The terrorists are trying to seize the African country as military forces from France are trying to defeat them. Now, in very surprising remarks, the U.S. general in charge of Africa is saying he and the army can't defeat Al-Qaeda in Mali, and his only hope is a standoff.
Realistically, we would all like to see the elimination of Al-Qaeda and others from northern Mali. Realistically, probably the best you can get is containment and disruption so that Al-Qaeda is no longer able to control territory as they do today.
Another of General Ham's jobs has been to train the Mali military to fight the Islamists. The general says that hasn't worked either. Meantime, on the ground in Mali, Al-Qaeda is spreading terror, and as they showed in one village, they are truly evil.
A flogging in a public square this month in Gao, northern Mali. This man's crime? He dared smoke a cigarette. Islamic militants setting an example for the hundreds of thousands in Mali still living under their rule. Suleiman and MUKTAR worked as truck drivers in Gao. When militants overran the town, the men were thrown in prison accused of stealing. After 3 months, MUKTAR says the jailers dragged them from their cells by their feet, tied turbans around their wrists, and began to hack off their hands. I prefer dying to being like this, MUKTAR says. My hand hurts, my heart hurts. I only have God to turn to. Suleiman says, the pain was terrible. It was the only thing I could feel. Now they say, unable to earn a living, they wander from house to house. Their lives, they say, are over. Malik Ali Omega was a radio journalist in Gao who spoke out against Sharia punishment. Each time they want to do something barbaric, I put out a call to people on the radio, and they responded en masse, Maiga told us. I denounced them, he said. He was brutally beaten by armed militants and left behind the town cemetery to die. Maiga escaped to the capital, Bamako. He's been warned that if he tries to return to Gao, he'll be killed. So he's staying with another refugee, SADOU DIALLO, the town's former mayor. DIALLO shows us around. He points to certificates from US Special Forces when they were on training missions in Mali. They stayed at his hotels in Gao, hotels now destroyed by the Islamists who brand him an American collaborator. And he asks where his American friends are in Mali's time of need. The Americans started to train the Malian army. Now, the army needs them, he said. They should finish what they started. There are hundreds of thousands of displaced Malians. They fled the Islamist-controlled north and are trying to get by in camps around the capital. Seydou Sangare, a Gao resident, told us, when they declared Sharia, everybody panicked. Christians, Muslims, everybody fled. For the Islamists, he told us, a human being is like an ant you squash, like an animal you slaughter. It may not look like it, but the displaced families here are the lucky ones. As this conflict escalates, aid agencies are warning of a humanitarian disaster. They say tens of thousands of people are now trapped, out of reach, the other side of that front line. French combat helicopters fly overhead, prompting cheers from below. To the people here, French forces represent the only hope of defeating the Islamists and allowing them to return home. Nemel Bagher, CNN, Bamako, Mali.
Also in Bamako is Catholic Relief Services. They've come to assist tens of thousands of refugees. CRS says most of the refugees need the basics of life, food, water, shelter. But the Catholic organization's leader in Mali tells us that the refugees' main need is peace. Well, some violence in Cairo, Egypt today, the second anniversary of the country's revolution. Protesters hurled rocks, bottles, and Molotov cocktails. They're complaining about the country's new constitution forced on them by the president, Mohamed Morsi, and his plans to set up an Islamist state in Egypt. The Coptic Catholic Church there says Morsi and the constitution are paving the way for the creation of an Islamist caliphate in Egypt, and that's a key goal of Al-Qaeda. Well, throughout the week, we've reported on anniversaries and milestones, the inauguration of our president, and the birth of a remarkable man who changed America. Now, in the week's installment of Into the Deep, our news director, Ed Wilkinson, reviews the significant week of news with Bishop DiMarzio, the Bishop of Brooklyn.
Bishop, thanks for being with us today.
Glad to be with you again.
It was a big week in Washington because we've inaugurated the new president now, and also there was the March for Life in Washington. And one of the things that might have been lost is that we also celebrated Martin Luther King Day this week.
Yes.
It's become a national holiday and a big day, especially for African Americans, but not just. Why should Catholics celebrate Martin Luther King Day?
Well, I think he was a man who had a big part in turning our history around. I think the history of discrimination and marginalization of people of color was a real mark against our nations, our progress. And in a peaceful, prayerful, Christian way, he was able to bring about change. I lived through it. I don't think at the time people saw it very positively. Many people saw him as a rabble-rouser, didn't understand what was happening. But when you look back after so much time now, you can see that there was a great wisdom in what happened. The unfortunate assassination was a terrible thing. But again, through this all, there's something positive that's happened. and something that we should recognize and celebrate.
Yeah. It's interesting that you would say that, because at the time he was not a very popular figure for many people. They thought he was a troublemaker.
Right.
And yet, as we look back, his message was one that really rings true, the nonviolent approach. Do you think it would ring true today? I mean, it doesn't seem to be the mood of people to take a nonviolent approach.
It's unfortunate that, you know, we see with these Occupy movements, they're on the edge of violence. I mean, they're not exactly peaceful. They're not nonviolent. They have this idea, you know, it is an intrusive way of getting what they want. So there's a big difference. Again, his way was a different way. It was a nonviolent way that is Christ's way, really, that we need to follow.
Yeah, great Christian example. Next week in the diocese, we'll be celebrating Catholic Schools Week. And I know you're always planning to get around. You visit these schools. Why do we need Catholic schools now more than ever?
Well, because the value system of our country is very much in danger of being, I think, destroyed. I mean, what are our values? Values of life, values of morality, so many things that are so important that need to be communicated. You can only do that when you have an educational environment that supports that value system. And that's what we have in our Catholic schools. We need to improve it. It's nowhere near perfect, but it's the best we have. And that's why we're committed 100% to preserving as many schools as we can. Our program of preserving the vision of the founders of Catholic schools at the beginning of this country, is that vision that we want to have available to every Catholic today, unfortunately, who can afford it. We try to make it as affordable as possible, but there is some sacrifice on the part of parents if they want to give their children a full Catholic education. We will have that available in all parts of the diocese through the system of academies. We're converting our schools into academies. There's about, after next year, should be about 36 established. It'll give us about another 60 schools that need to be changed. But in 3 years, we feel that every school will be an academy with lay leadership on the boards and a better chance of survival into the future with better quality education.
Hurricane Sandy took a big financial chunk out of people here in the diocese, especially along the ocean. A lot of them are having a hard time struggling with tuition.
Right.
What are we doing to help
Well,
those
what
parents?
we did is we raised, right now, it looks like $2.2 million that'll be available for tuition assistance to those people that were affected, which is quite a feat, really. It's separate from all the other tuition assistance we've been giving, which is about $9 million a year. Again, our whole tuition, it's almost $100 million. That is part of the whole tuition for all the schools. So it's a big number. So we're trying to help, and we will. And now we're coming up with a system that will allocate this $2.2 million that we raised through concert, through donations and other things from our foundation. So we know they need help to stay in school, and we're going to be able to do that.
Sure. People are still talking about that concert. That was pretty good.
It was really great.
It was a good time.
One of the better nights I've ever had.
And will you play Stump the Bishop with the kids again?
I always try.
Okay.
They will, I'm afraid.
Okay.
They're getting smarter, the kids.
Enjoy your visits.
Okay.
And thanks for being with us today.
With you today.
Up next, the secrets to a good Mass. The details after the break. Earlier this week, we reported that the Vatican is preparing a Mass manual, a guide to better prepare priests and parishioners to better celebrate the Holy Sacrifice. Now, a priest in England has come up with what he's calling the secrets to a good Mass. Among them, start on time, don't leave out any of the parts, wear a chasuble, and keep the homily short. Meantime, our diocesan newspaper, The Tablet, has joined with the Knights of Columbus to sponsor a contest for children, asking them to come up with ways to keep Christ in Christmas. Now the winners of the contest has been selected. We learn more now from our news director, Ed Wilkinson. He's also editor-in-chief of The Tablet.
The Knights and The Tablet, we started this contest about 4 years ago because we thought that maybe Christmas was losing some of its religious significance. So the Knights have had this slogan about keep Christ in Christmas, and we said, hey, we got together with them, we sat down, we said, how are we going to encourage kids to keep Christ in Christmas? We want to see that religious significance coming through the piece of art. We'll have an art contest. And that's how it evolved.
They're praying for the gift that God gave them.
It's the message of Jesus' birth. So I feel we can spread his message on a stamp.
Like Jesus came for all people, rich and poor.
This year's winners, we had over 700 entries, which is a record for this competition in the last 4 years. But it was going to take some time to judge them.
We get lots and lots of drawings, and by the time we go through them and sort it out and stuff, it takes that long to do it.
They had so many entries, we couldn't do it before Christmas. And I thought it was a great idea because they took their time, and now we have wonderful results.
The 4th grade winner is Antonio Gentili from St. Bernadette School.
It's grown throughout the years. First year, maybe 160 entries. Then it went up to 300, 500, and now we're like over 700 entries.
Every category, the student came from a different school, which is, that's really pretty exceptional.
11 different schools are getting represented here tonight, and that's a first. The artwork has been amazing. I mean, we want them to see what does Keep Christ in Christmas mean to them.
Each winner tonight will get 3 certificates, one from the tablet, one from the Knights of Columbus, one from the New York State Senate, from Senator Marty Golden. You got a medal, and there's also a check, okay? So you got to go home with a nice package.
And finally tonight, as we conclude a remarkable day in a remarkable week, it is probably worth noting that today, the Universal Church celebrates the conversion of St. Paul. Another remarkable day, centuries ago, when on the road to Damascus, Jesus transformed a murderous persecutor of Christians into the worldwide messenger of God's word. It's also probably worth noting that another murderous persecutor once killed 6 million people, and today we call that a Holocaust. Well, in the past 40 years, 55 million innocents have been slaughtered. Maybe someday they will have a name too. Well, thank you for watching us tonight. We leave you with more from the March for Life. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. Have a good night.